Are you using different substances on these trips, on these journeys? Are you using just medicinal mushrooms or ayahuasca, or what are you doing?
The medicine that I work with clients is mushrooms. Psilocybin. Yeah. I've taken mushrooms, San Pedro, ayahuasca in other ceremonies. So I've experienced them. I prefer to work with mushrooms myself.
Just curious, are there differences to what you experienced and maybe what you've heard from each that will kind of put them in different positions?
Yeah. So it's very interesting. I find with ayahuasca is very much grandmother energy. She is like the all-knowing feminine darkness, if you will. It's hard to put this into words.
That sounds pretty cool.
And it's quite interesting because the first time you've heard about ayahuasca experience before?
Yep.
So the common narrative is that you purge. Physically you purge, emotionally, psychologically you purge. So the first time I ever did ayahuasca, I was expecting to fully purge. Now, granted, I had done 8 years of medicinal work before doing ayahuasca with mushrooms. But still, I was like, all right, get ready. Here we go. And so the only thing I experienced with ayahuasca that first time was, and it was nighttime, and I was probably in a group of 20 other people, and I laid there and had my eyes closed. And the only thing that I experienced was I saw golden light and I felt completely peaceful. There were no other visuals beyond the golden light. There was no other feeling beyond feeling peaceful. And it was quite interesting because everyone else around me was purging. So like if I listened to them, I would start feeling a little nauseous. But anytime I brought it back to myself, peace and golden light. And that's been my experience with ayahuasca so far. I mean, I have had visuals since then, but it's always been very much, she's always been very kind to me. And if I think about it from my past experience, both my mother and her mother, my grandmother, were both very hard women. And so, although I'm sure they loved me, there was no outward appearance of love. I could not tell. So I think, again, back to this idea of the medicine gives you what you need, not what you want. I was expecting the beating, which would have been consistent with my growing up. And she gave me instead what I needed, which is, you need to feel peace, my little one. You need to feel this safety. And that's been my experience with her. I've never purged with her. Physically, emotionally I'll cry and stuff. But so she's been always very gentle with me. So she's grandmother. San Pedro is grandfather energy. So often done in daytime, starting the ceremony in daytime in the light. That was much more visual to me, those times that I do it. Those times are also very physical for me. So when an animal goes into fight or flight, and as soon as they get away from the predator, you'll see them go through this shivering thing to off-let that energy. Yes. In all of my San Pedro ceremonies, it has been that. It's this uncontrollable shivering. And it's funny because, your part of your brain is still there and you're like, am I cold? What's going on? And you're like, no, I'm not cold at all. It's just my body is going through a process of off-letting all the repressed emotions. So In San Pedro, I feel like I'm being held. It feels like my grandfather is holding me and protecting me. That's what the experience is like for me. And then with mushrooms has more of grandson energy. So kind of playful, depending on what you need. Not always playful, but it's a bit lighter. It's a bit, for me, it's a bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? It lightens the energy rather than like with ayahuasca. It's like, it's very here, now, not heavy necessarily, but here. With medicine, it feels like the layers are coming this way. If that, again, this is all very challenging to put into words.
Of course, I understand.
But I think for me, those are the differences. I mean, across the board, ayahuasca is grandmother, San Pedro is grandfather, mushrooms are grandson. But that's the energy that I feel in each of them. And
you're only going with the grandson when you do your journeys?
When I work with people.
When you work with people, yes.
Yeah. When I work with other shaman, I've done
whatever. Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, not whatever they're offering, but depending on what it is. So, so that's what I work.
What's the environment like that you like to position people in if you're working with someone? Is there a particular environment or is it to each person? How does that work? Because I do feel like you said Times Square probably is an environment you want to be doing this journey in. So what is the ideal environment?
So the ideal environment is, we pass through phases. When I work with people, we usually pass through phases. The first one will be in a safe container. So, I mean, I prefer to go up somewhere in nature, not in New York City, somewhere that is not a place that you're familiar with. So not your own house, because then you have connections and memories, and we want to create a blank space, really. So somewhere out of the city, connected to nature, somewhere where we could start out inside and then eventually move outside. And so that transition is very important to me, to be able to be safe. And because it's just like the narrative of life, right? You start in the small container of your mother's womb, then you're in the home, and then eventually you go out into the world and interact with the world. And so this is energetically mimicking that cycle. So I've done it, like this weekend, we're going up to Garrison. So, I mean, sorry, Airbnb, but sometimes we do it with Airbnbs.
There's someone right now at Airbnb looking into your account.
Where is she? Yeah, exactly. But the important part is like nice container somewhere outside of the city that we have access to then going outside.